the 2016 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Republican race for the 11th Congressional District.
Good afternoon. I'm Donna Lowry, freelance reporter and longtime education reporter for WXIA-TV. We'd like to welcome you to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the GPB studios in Atlanta. This is the debate among the Republican candidates in Georgia's 11th Congressional District in north central Georgia. The 11th Congressional District consists of all of Bartow and Cherokee counties and parts of Fulton and Cobb. Now, let's meet the candidates. They are, in alphabetical order, Hayden Collins. He is the commanding officer from the state of Georgia in the Georgia Department of Defense. Daniel Cowan has more than 17 years as experience as a businessman in both domestic and international business. Billy Davis is a businessman with more than 30 years experience in land development, vacation resorts, and medical research facilities. William Llop is a certified public accountant with more than 30 years experience with small businesses in Georgia. And Barry Loudermilk is a U.S. Air Force veteran and has represented Georgia's 11th Congressional District since 2014. Now, let's meet our panelists. Tom Baxter has written about politics and the South for more than 40 years. He currently pens a weekly column for Saporta Report. Scott Kimbler is the morning reporter for WYAY 106.7 News Radio. Kristina Torres has been with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution since 2003 and covers state government politics and the legislature. Tonight's debate will consist of 3 rounds. For more information on the rules for each round, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website. It is atlantapressclub.org. Now, let's get started. The first round, each candidate will be asked one question by one of our panelists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer that question. But first, I have a general question for each one of you, and I'd like each one of you to answer. House Speaker Paul Ryan has said he is not ready to endorse the presumptive Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump. I want to ask each of you, are you ready to endorse Donald Trump for president? Let's start with you, Mr. Loudermilk.
Well, I believe what Speaker Ryan said was he's not ready to endorse until he has a chance to meet with Donald Trump and ensure that he does stand by each plank of the platform of the Republican Party. I am going to support who our nominee is, and it appears that it is going to be Donald Trump. Because the most important thing is that we have a Republican in the White House so that we can continue the reforms that we have begun in the House this year.
I'm actually going to go right next to you for our next candidate, William Llop.
Yes, thank you. We need to support the Republican nominee. By some travesty that we do not get a Republican president, we need to support and all get behind Donald Trump and for president. Thank you.
Thank you. Billy Davis.
Yes, I'll support Mr. Trump. He is far, far better than the alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel Cowan.
Yes, ma'am. I absolutely will support Donald Trump for our presidency. I've told people this before that for me, no matter who it's running, it's a vote against Hillary Clinton. Our country cannot stand for another 8 years of what we've been through. I would vote for my rescue dog against Hillary Clinton. So I'll vote for any Republican who wins the popular vote, and that's Donald Trump. So I definitely support him.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. And now, Mr. Hayden Collins.
The most amazing thing that has taken place in this past year is the voting public has come forward to show the establishment that it's American issues, it's not party issues. Donald Trump is in the position he's in because he took on the establishment and the American people supported him. If there was an opportunity to get to a brokered convention and someone was to be a spoiler, it would have split the party. It would have split things into a position where polarization would have taken forward. I will support him. I support his position because I am the outsider just like he is.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to get started with our panelists, and the first question comes from Scott Kimbler. You have the first question of Hayden Collins.
Mr. Collins, there has been somewhat of a fracture in the Republican Party and not jumping right behind him. And just a couple of months ago, we did have 17 candidates that were running for that. How do you foresee you bringing together the Republicans when so many have been vocal against him, and we sort of seem to have a fractured Republican Party at this point, at least as far as the messages they're putting out? How do you unify everybody behind somebody that they were so polarized against not so long ago?
Well, let's take it to our district and our concerns here in the 11th Congressional District specifically. It's a very polarized Washington, D.C., regardless of the position they're going for. President, Congress, Senate, it does not matter. What's going to happen is individuals are going to have to come forward to find common ground. The individuals that I will see in Washington, D.C., we may have something in common. We may have fostered children together. We may have adopted children together. We may have fought in combat in the same zones. We may have been in a position where we have neutral ground to go forward with, and we have to find that neutral ground. The most embarrassing thing that we've seen lately is that in the United States, we've become so polarized that everything that happens in Washington, D.C. is either one side or the other, and it's addressing party issues. It's not addressing American issues. We have to find common ground. And we have to find common ground quickly and get away from the polarization, or we will not be able to recover from our long-term problems. Long-term economic plans, long-term debt solutions, education solutions. These have to come forward, and there's not an American out there that will not support education or debt or anything else that we need for our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Kristina Torres, you have the next question for Barry Loudermilk.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Loudermilk, we talked about polarized Washington, but let's also talk about practical Washington. And one of the issues in this race is the very first vote you took as a member of Congress for John Boehner as House Speaker in January 2015. And you've been heavily criticized by your opponents for that vote, but explain it to the district.
Well, there's misconception in that because it wasn't the very first vote. It was actually the second vote. The very first vote I took as a new incoming member of Congress was against John Boehner. In fact, I had the courage to call John Boehner because the scriptures tell us if you have aught with someone, you go to them. So I called and had a meeting with him face to face. And I told John Boehner that I thought that we needed new leadership. We needed to go after the establishment. We needed to reform Washington, and I just didn't see that he was the one to do it. So when the Republicans met in our primary to determine who was going to be our nominee in what you could consider the general election, I voted against John Boehner. Of course, it made press and made national news. But when we came to the floor, that general election, when it was the Republican versus the Democrat, there was no way I was going to give any chance of Hillary Clinton becoming Speaker of the House. So I voted with most other conservatives for John Boehner, but we never stopped fighting by forming the House Freedom Caucus. We ran John Boehner out of office, and we have a new Speaker, and we're reforming the House of Representatives today.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. Now, Tom Baxter, you get the next question to Billy Davis.
Mr. Davis, on your website, you say that you're running against a career politician. But according to a recent story, you also have a political background. There are several allegations in this story, but one that I want to get into is that apparently you served in the Arizona State Legislature.
Yes, sir.
Well, if that is the case, then are you not vulnerable to the same charge that you're a career politician? And could you tell us something about your career in the legislature out there?
Well, that was over 30 years ago. As a businessman at that time, I ran for the state Senate and won the election twice. We were able to accomplish quite a bit. We got in the Del Webb Memorial Hospital, Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and a number of other things that I was concerned about at that time. Now I'm ready to give back again after these 30-odd years.
Great. Thank you. Scott, you get the next question to William Llop.
Mr. Lott, in January, we will have a new president, be it a Republican or a Democrat. Would you be one of those congressmen that is strictly against the other party? Should it be the other party, or would you be one of those reach across the aisle congressmen?
I'm one of 11 children, and the spirit of compromise is something that I've worked with all my life, and I feel like that we can make good decisions in Washington, but you will have to come to an agreement. And I think I can follow the conservative values, but I believe I'm willing to compromise on certain issues.
Thank you. Kristina, you get the final question in this round to Daniel Cowan.
Mr. Cowan, we talked, Mr. Llop just talked about the spirit of compromise, but you've been one who's criticized the incumbents' yes votes on certain issues. Let me ask, just from a devil's advocate standpoint, if you're elected, how do you get things done if you always say no?
Absolutely. Well, first thing I'd like to respond, because I'm a Christian, I believe truth matters. So going back on the Boehner vote, which is one of those yes votes that I've criticized, the only published record that there is the yes vote for John Boehner as Speaker. And there's also a published disclosure of a $5,000 check that was cashed by Barry Loudermilk from John Boehner right after that vote took place. So I think just got to clear that up. The second thing is, look, I'm a business person. We understand how to drive consensus, but consensus doesn't necessarily mean that you give away the farm. It doesn't mean that you're willing. I mean, look, everybody understands you have to compromise, but you also have to measure what you're compromising. We can't compromise our $20 trillion debt. We can't compromise on those essentials to conservatism.
Thank you very much. That concludes our first round. In the second round, each candidate will ask one question to his or her opponent. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Daniel Cowan will get the first question. Mr. Cowan.
This question is to Congressman Loudermilk. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump, declared on the campaign trail that those members of Congress who voted for the $1.1 trillion omnibus spending bill and the TPP trade legislation, also known Obama trade, were traitors and they should be fired. Based on the fact that you voted for both of those pieces of legislation, my question to you is, how do you think you'll be able to work with Trump, being that he thinks you're part of the problem and should be fired?
Well, first of all, either you or Donald Trump have their facts totally wrong, which isn't surprising in this campaign. We've been dealing with that all the way around. No one has voted on the TPP yet. The TPP hasn't even been up for consideration. So how could I have voted for something that is still being negotiated? The TPP hasn't happened. And so with the omnibus spending bill, you know, it's interesting that we stopped at Alabama from taking water resources from Georgia with that. My son serves in the military. We stopped in the next round of Obama's draconian cuts to the military, which put our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines at risk by not having the proper equipment that they need to train. We stopped several key provisions of Obamacare. So if you think that these things are traitorous, then maybe you need to reassess where you are. And in fact, what I would encourage, as we know that most of you have said you have not read the omnibus bill, is maybe start reading the bills before you criticize someone for them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cowan, you have a chance to rebut.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with this. I mean, the omnibus spending bill, the final version of it, you guys had less than 2 days to read. It was 2,500 pages, 1 foot high when you stood it on a table. So the idea that you went through and personally read it before you cast the vote, I think, is illogical. The second side of it is that Congress is spending money that we don't have. We have a $20 trillion debt, and we must solve that debt problem.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Now, Hayden Collins, this next question is yours.
Thank you. The First Amendment, Barry, is the cornerstone to our Constitution, and the freedom of speech is the cornerstone for everyone who has an opportunity to speak out loud. 4 times this week, during the forums that we've been in, you've called for a restriction of the First Amendment and social media. Why would you restrict the First Amendment?
Mr. Collins, I don't have really a clue what you're talking about. Maybe you ought to define it a little more.
You were talking about social media as in Facebook. Don't believe what you read on Facebook. Don't see Facebook. Don't pay attention to what people are.
Well, let me tell you.
Those differences of opinion matter.
Well,
people should have the right to speak.
I think I have.
All right, please let him answer.
I think I have a right to speak as well. if you think that criticizing facts on Facebook is a restriction of the right to speak, I think you need to reassess what you're actually asking to do the people to vote for. The right to speak is a core value. The same with the right to religion, which means I also have the right to criticize those who spread false information over whatever media. Just because you don't like the facts that I have brought up, that you got your facts from social media, not from the original source, doesn't mean that, your right to read Facebook trumps my right to share the truth with the American voters. Rights are equally spread out to everyone. And we have sworn to uphold those rights. When you take the oath of office in Congress, you're upholding to hold the right of everyone and defend the right of everyone, whether you like it or not. And that's the stance that I take continually, that even if I disagree, I will stand firm to defend the right of someone to speak and someone to worship and someone to pray.
Oh, great. Thank you. Mr. Collins, your rebuttal.
You were bold in front of this panel, but when it came time to be bold in Washington, D.C., your courage turned cold. 4 times this week, you called for restrictions of the First Amendment. You even called for restrictions for people not to use Facebook, not just to read it or disagree with it, not to use Facebook. We need boldness in Washington, D.C., not in front of a panel. We need boldness there to make decisions, to have the courage to follow the Constitution and do the right thing. I will fight. You send me to Washington, D.C., I will have that courage to bring it down to an end. And I will tolerate Facebook and social media because that is the new wave of how our new generation is speaking. It should be respected.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Barry Loudermilk, your turn to ask a question.
Mr. Cowan, as you brought up a few minutes ago, and you mentioned in a previous forum, you would have voted against the legislation that funded our military. My son serves as an airborne infantryman, a Pathfinder. And he has been recently pulled out of the field because they didn't have enough bullets to continue their training, putting them and their comrades at great risk. Our Air Force pilots, which many are friends of mine, are having to train in simulators because they don't have enough fuel to fly.
Please get to the question.
My question is, if you would have voted against the omnibus, which according to Lockheed would have cost 5,000 jobs at risk here, what would you do now in Congress to restore those jobs and restore the military funding?
Mr. Cowan, please answer.
Absolutely. Look, I'm a business person, right? Let's start with how I believe fiscal conservatism ought to be run. It starts with let's have a budget, right? But just 2 weeks ago, Congress, we failed to have a budget again. So what does that mean? Well, our Christmas present for our future generation is a big bow around another omnibus spending bill. The second thing is I never said anything about not funding the military. My dad's a military veteran. I was actually born on a military base, and I think you've seen General Fulford's endorsement of me for acts I've done with people who are in harm's way. Look, we cannot compromise our ideals and allow America's future to be mortgaged because of bad negotiation. We must have the discipline to budget. We must have the discipline to compromise on non-essentials, but stand firm on supporting our military, but also maintain the fiscal discipline of our country.
All right. Mr. Loudermilk, your rebuttal.
Unfortunately, there's very few bills in Congress as simple as I like puppies. They're all difficult pieces of legislation. I've heard you criticize me for voting one way, and now you're criticizing because we don't have a budget. The reason we don't have a budget is because we are negotiating. We've actually changed the process in Washington. We are actually at the table. Conservatives like me, who had always been pushed aside, are now at the table, and we are negotiating a budget. We're changing Washington, D.C. We're changing the process, and these reforms are exactly what is needed.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. A reminder that 30 seconds for the question, 30 seconds for the rebuttal. Billy Davis, now it's your turn to ask a question.
Mr. Loudermilk, we've had some conversation about the omnibus. I think the main reason that I decided to step into the race against you was that when I counted up, you were like 23 or 24 to the right of center in voting with Obama's bill. Omnibus bill, and there was plenty other seasoned congressmen that could have voted in your stead as a freshman legislator.
Please get to the question.
My question is, how could you vote again to for another bill to allow Planned Parenthood to get funded continually out of that bill.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Well, I guess I'm a popular guy up here today. And, we've addressed the Planned Parenthood issue over and over again, and the sad thing is you guys know the truth and you're continuing to perpetuate this. The Congressional Research Service said there was no direct appropriations, and the reason I have a 100% rating with National Right to Life, Georgia Life Alliance, is because there was no way you could totally defund Planned Parenthood in the omnibus. Look, I took a courageous vote. The easy vote for me, and the fact that, as you guys have said many times over again, the reason I have 4 opponents is because of that vote. The easy vote would have been to simply make a political statement, come back home, be the hero. But I'm not going to stand and let others take the shots because I decided to stand for the 11th Congressional District, to protect our water rights, to protect the military, to protect our men and women in uniform, to suspend onerous taxes of Obamacare. These are the types of things that you have to have courage. That's what differentiates leadership from people who just want to cast a vote so they can get reelected. I love this country, and it deserves those who are willing to stand up and do what is not popular but what is right.
Mr. Davis, 30 seconds for a
I
rebuttal.
would have had the courage to vote against that bill because it's against my convictions. As I told you the other day, sir, it's never right to do wrong to get a chance to do right. You did wrong. You should not have voted. You should have taken a stand and not stood in the stead of all of the Washington bureaucrats and those legislators that did wrong in going along with Mr. Obama.
All right, thank you very much. William Llop, this is your chance to ask a question.
Yes, I have a question for
Surprised.
Mr. Loudermilk. Barry, you have said repeatedly that you cannot get things done because we have a Democratic president right now. What's going to happen if, by some sheer chance, we have a Democratic president next term?
Well, again, you're mischaracterizing what I've said. I said we can't get any further unless we have a Republican president to do the reforms that we need to do. A $20 trillion debt? We must have a Republican president to secure our southern border, to provide the protection we need against terrorism. I serve on a counterterrorism task force. We actually are at risk in this nation. But to answer your question, we have actually moved a conservative agenda even with a liberal Democrat president in the White House. Why? Because of the reforms that I helped bring in through the House Freedom Caucus, through the Article 1 project that I work on with Senator Mike Lee. These conservative ideas that we brought to the table, we replaced the speaker, brought a new speaker in, which, by the way, nobody owns my voting card. I don't care who contributes. I vote my conscience and I vote what is right for my district. We have actually moved a conservative agenda because we are unified in the House of Representatives because a lot of the work that I and my colleagues have done to bring reforms to Washington, and now we just need to move those into the Senate.
Mr. Llop, your rebuttal.
Barry, your track record is failure. The omnibus spending bill, the Boehner vote. We need leadership in Washington, and you're not getting it done right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If you are just joining us, this is the debate between the Republican candidates in Georgia's United States Congressional District, the 11th Congressional District. We will now go to our third and final round. In this round, each panelist will ask a question to the candidate of his or her choice until we run out of time. I will determine a rebuttal when that is appropriate. So we're going to go to our journalists now. Scott, you will get the first question.
Mr. Collins, one of the things we've faced here in Georgia for 3 legislative sessions now is legalizing use of medical marijuana, specifically cannabidiol oil. And each time this has gone through the session, people have said that their hands are tied because Congress doesn't deregulate transporting legal cannabidiol oil over state lines. Where do you stand on this? And do you think Congress should move and deregulate that? Otherwise, we have people who are using a legal substance in the state but can't legally bring it to the state.
I love children. All of the children we worked in our homes, the rape victims, the sexually abused, the methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, we have a long line of experience of working with these kids. If they're taking a drop of marijuana oil to stop a kid from having a seizure 70,000 times a day down to 10, whatever the rate is, and it betters the life for that child, The question is, how are we controlling 200 opiates in the state of Georgia and they're afraid of how to control marijuana? If we can control those 200 opiates, why can't we control the marijuana? It's not going to be a congressional issue. It's a state issue. And the state issue, they should address it for the betterment of those that need the medicine, that these children who are having the seizures, that these ones who are suffering, that they can see relief. It's compassion. It shouldn't be tied up in legislation and politics over who thinks it's a runaway drug or a gateway drug. There are prescriptions, there are rules, and there are ways.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Kristina, it's now your time to ask a question.
Let's carry that theme on a little bit more. I'll address this to Mr. Loudermilk. As a member of Congress, I know Mr. Collins said it was a state issue in terms of allowing it. But there is a federal issue there in that it's against federal law to possess and carry over state lines, any of that. Do you think that needs to be changed? Would you vote for a bill that came up that would legalize medical marijuana?
Well, if it only legalized the medical marijuana from the aspect of the cannabis oils, like was done here in the state of Georgia, which is not an addictive drug, there is no chance of you getting high. It is actually a more of a prescription type medication. Yes, in fact, I have already voted that way. Another courageous vote that we needed to take when an amendment was put into one of our appropriations bills that would have overridden what the state legislature had already voted to do. I was one of the few that stood up and stood by the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which I was sworn to uphold. Yeah, Congress has a role in there, especially under interstate commerce, under the Constitution. And we need to, I think it's our responsibility to remove the barriers so the states can and the legislatures can make those decisions that are right. Look, people are suffering. And and I'm not the scientist, but from what I hear, this cannabis oil does provide relief and it does provide help for those. And so I think Congress has a responsibility to remove governmental hurdles that gets in the way of the state.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. Tom, you may ask a question.
Mr. Cowan, Donald Trump said this week that he's rethinking his position on raising the federal minimum wage, which is now at $7.25 an hour, and he's thinking possibly about raising it as high as $15 an hour, which is a little farther than Hillary Clinton has gone in her support for the minimum wage. What's your position on this? And like your presidential nominee, are you willing to rethink it?
I'll start off by saying that I believe that businesses, and I'm a businessman, I believe that businesses, we've had so much regulation, so much inefficiency, so much taxation, and an inefficient tax structure. It's caused businesses not to maybe be able to pay as much to employees as we all would have liked on that. But rather than us prescribing a $15 rate per hour, I believe it's best for us to cut the regulation that you've got in Washington when it comes to businesses. Reform the tax code. Make this place business friendly, a pro-American business where we don't worry about taking jobs overseas. We bring jobs back home. We can bring money that we make overseas in international operations back home. That then will allow us to fund our employees better. Everybody knows a good company focuses on its employees. We have to create an environment for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cowan. Scott, you have a question.
Mr. Cowan, building off of that, how would you get companies to come home? They're saving costs by doing the overseas work and the less expensive labor. How do you tell these companies that America is a good place to come back to?
I think, in fact, you'll find the opposite is starting to happen. We had this big time where we started offshoring all our call centers, for example, and have many friends who are in that industry, and they're actually onshoring a lot more of that work now. But we all have to be honest as well that business regulations in the U.S. are not as friendly as some other places. And so what I would say, how do you encourage businesses to operate here? Well, first of all, we have the largest corporate tax rate of any industrialized nation. We have to make this a business-friendly environment and economy for companies. Encourage investment here. Encourage investment here. We talk about using the fair tax, things like that. Well, I think fair tax might be a stretch too far, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to protect our industry. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't not penalize American companies because they have to pay taxation and they have to work under this regulation.
Thank you very much. Kristina.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, let's take the idea of the fair tax. I know you're a strong supporter of that, eliminating the federal income tax and maybe going to a consumption tax. Mr. Cowan just said it may be a little too far. Explain your position on that.
Let me take this just a little bit further, and that is if you've got businesses overseas and you make it attractive enough here in America for them to bring their money home without charging 30-40% on that money, then of course they'll have money here to hire more people, to build more businesses, and that in itself will provide jobs all over that will feed the tax that's necessary to run our country. I don't like the IRS because it's too involved. I like a fair tax or a flat tax, and I would try to do what I could to get that type of a tax. But I think that for jobs and business in America, the corporate tax has got to be changed. It's got to be changed. Let those Americans that desire to bring their money home and invest it here be able to do that.
Thank you very much. Tom Baxter.
Congressman Loudermilk, the day after the Brussels terrorist attack, you made a statement in the Homeland Security Committee in which you said that political correctness is killing Americans every day. And then you went on and listed several bills in which the Democrats and Republicans are at a stalemate, and you mentioned several of those today. But that's a heck of a statement. Can you specifically say how political correctness is killing Americans on a daily basis?
Well, Tom, thank you for that. And clearly we can. In San Bernardino, the neighbor of the assailant saw suspicious activity, but was afraid to report it because they were afraid that the federal officials would begin to investigate them. In my own town, in Bartow County, as I mentioned, I'm on a counterterrorism task force, and I've traveled throughout the Middle East, locations undisclosed, and throughout Europe, investigating terrorism and the flow of terrorists into the United States. We've also done a lot of investigation here in the United States, and we have seen multiple instances, as in my own town, of people who have seen suspicious activity, but they're afraid to report that because they would be labeled as an Islamophobe. And as I said in that hearing, it's not when terrorism is going to come to the U.S., it's already here. Ask the people in San Bernardino, ask the people in Garland, Texas, or right up the road in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And cutting $599 million from Homeland Security budget on countering terrorism is no way to do that, is exactly what the president has proposed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Llop, I'd like to ask you a question.
Certainly.
What is your opinion of the flat tax?
Well, the flat tax was tabled in 2005, and if it were to come back around, I'd want to spend more time learning more, but I know enough about it. The real way to fix the tax system is to reduce the rates. Corporately, 39%, bring that down to 25%. Individually, let's bring that rate down to bring that rate lower individually. That will free up necessary cash flow, which in turn will stimulate the economy. This is something that we can get accomplished right now, as opposed to some theory behind some flat tax that may come into existence later on. Certainly a shift to the consumption-based tax system, we can start that shift, but immediately we need to reduce rates and free up necessary cash flow for businesses and individuals.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Scott Kimbler.
Mr. Davis, you held office in a border state, so you have been in a state that is directly affected almost daily by immigration. Is it something that we need to look at to build the wall, as Trump puts it, to more heavily regulate border immigration, or do we need to take a more lapsed approach?
First of all, I think that our congressman voted on House Bill 2029 to bring in 10,000 additional Syrians. When I was in the state Senate in Arizona back in the early 80s, we had a problem then. The trail from Mexico to Arizona was just non-stoppable. It's been that way ever since. Governor Jan Brewer, whom I served with for 4 years, she emphatically went after the president to do something about flooding California, Arizona, and Texas with illegals coming across the border. Yes, we've got to build a wall. Mr. Trump got it right in the early days when he started by saying we've got to stop the illegals from coming in and taking our jobs and bringing in heroin, bringing in drugs. We've got to do that. We've got to stop it on both ends, from the congressional side as well as from the border side.
Thank you very much. Mr. Loudermilk, your position on this.
Yeah, and again, the fact is, not only did I vote, but I co-sponsored legislation to block Syrian refugees coming into the nation. It's important that you get the facts and that you get the truth out there. I assume he's referring to is the end-of-year spending bill, which we avoided a shutdown of the government, defunding our military, stopping key provisions of Obamacare. But what was actually in there was the more immediate thing we needed to address, which was terrorists that were exploiting the visa waiver program. That was the most important thing that we had to do, and we slammed the door shut on the visa waiver program so that none of the terrorists or potential terrorists from hotspots around the world could come in. We actually passed the SAFE Act in the House of Representatives, which on a bipartisan veto-proof measure would have shut down the entire refugee program, but yet the president has threatened to veto it, so it's stuck in the Senate. I am not weak on terrorism, and I can promise you that. If there's anybody in the House of Representatives that stands strong to protect America, it's Barry Loudermilk.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Davis, you wanted to rebut?
In that bill, our guest workers came in 66,000 up to 264,000 in that bill that Mr. Loudermilk voted for. That's over 200,000 jobs taken from Americans.
All right. Thank you very much. Kristina Torres.
Go to another issue that's been out there, Mr. Davis. You were recently subject of a Fox 5 investigation that found you were a felon who served time in 1997 for lying on a loan application. Here's a chance to respond. What do you say to that?
Well, that started over 30 years ago. I did answer the question accurately once. It was a loan that I had taken out and had paid back from an institution that had already been taken over by the federal government. It had to do with signatures and paperwork. It was something that I fought for many, many years and finally decided it's best for my family and I to just move on. And so I took the short way out and took responsibility and moved on. My business then thrived because I was not concentrating all of my time against something put after me about something that there were no victims and no money involved. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Tom.
Mr. Collins, speaking just in terms of the 11th Congressional District, do you think it would be practical to carry out the forced deportation of undocumented workers, all the undocumented workers in the district? And do you think there would be any economic cost to the district in doing so?
Great question. First of all, let's state something to make sure it's very clear. I don't live in fear. My brother's wife is from Lima, Peru. She's now a nurse at Anaheim Hospital, became American citizen the right way. My sister's husband's from Sydney, Australia, became American citizen the right way. They tell me that regardless if it's undocumented immigrants, whatever, however they got here, they have to do it the right way. There's no sidebar. There's no saying your visa's expired, you get to stay here. No, that has to be retracted. They have to go after them. This has to be brought forward. And there's not a good way to do it. I proposed Ellis Islands. We were talking about the wall a while ago. I proposed Ellis Islands all throughout the Southwest. It was a really good idea a long time ago. We can vet these individuals. We can build walls and funnel them to these Ellis Islands and take these individuals that want to work to build a better life, to build a better career for themselves inside the United States and welcome them. And the ones that are not, the ones that are bad guys, we have guys, well, in special offices for just such an occasion with special jail cells, and we can deport them. And we can do it properly.
Thank you very much. Scott Kimbler?
Mr. Collins, something that keeps coming up, at least in the past 3 presidential elections, is natural-born citizen. We had the allegations that perhaps the president was not born in the U.S., even though documents showing Hawaii. Ted Cruz was born in Canada. John McCain, born in Panama. How do you define natural-born citizen?
It's a great question. In fact, I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. You might not know that. I was born on a U.S. military base in Frankfurt, Germany. So, and it's true. In fact, in my campaign literature, I talk about natural-born citizens as well and our need to refine that. So, look, the 14th Amendment's pretty clear. You know, if you're born to legal citizen, then obviously you are a citizen of the United States, and that's been tested up in court. My issue with natural-born citizenship really goes over towards what people have called anchor baby, other things. That's people who come across our borders, have a kid so that they're citizens here, even though they are here illegally, and then provide that. So for our country to provide that right for people who have broken the law and come here illegally, that's where I have issue. I'm never going to say Barack Obama can't be president, but it's false to say that the Constitution has been proven to uphold people here illegally have the right to have a citizen here.
Thank you very much.
It's never been tested in the courts.
Mr. Llop, I'd like to have you answer the question about natural-born citizens, please.
Yeah, I thought if you were born in the United States, you get to be run for president, and that was it. I didn't think Cruz qualified.
All right. Thank you very much. Kristina?
Mr. Loudermilk, you talked about terrorism and your service in there. I want to ask you if Mr. Trump does become president and he follows through on proposals to ban Muslims from entering the country, would you support that?
Well, I support the idea and what he's trying to get at. The problem that you have is you have to look at the long term. Is it enforceable? Now, if you specify Muslims as being a religion, you cannot prove that. It's unprovable. That's a condition of the heart. That's between you and God, what your religion is. But I do believe that we can and we should, and we have in the past, restrict entry by those based on where they're from, their national origin, any aspect of their background, any aspect of their life that we can prove. The other aspect that is short-sighted when you talk about using religion as the criteria is the Quran actually bans lying unless you're in the pursuit of jihad. So you risk the aspect of saying, well, only those that are intent on doing harm to America can actually come here. So I think we have to actually use a criteria such as where are you coming from, what nation are you from, and other background, and not religion.
All right. Thank you very much. Tom Baxter.
Congressman, one more crack at you. You hear a lot about inaction and gridlock in Washington, but in the case of the Zika virus, we've got a clear threat to the nation's health. We have experts who say it's coming, it's on our doorstep, and yet Congress and the White House are still wrangling over the appropriation to do something about it. Isn't this a serious enough problem that we ought to just rise above partisan politics and work out some kind of agreement to move forward on this?
Well, we do, but we have to be very pragmatic about how we do it. I mean, the president has, or the UN has suggested that we use abortion, which is asinine. That we don't use abortion as a way of dealing with the Zika or as the birth defects. In fact, in the end of year spending bill, we actually banned all federal funds to be used from abortion as well as in foreign aid. But what we have to do is look at how can we respond, how do we get in front of this issue by coming together and working together and put politics aside. We can do that. And as I said, we've actually put reforms into place to where we're bringing all people to the table. Now, Washington had worked so long in the arena of one person making every decision, it's finding itself a little difficult to change, but we're beginning to do that. Zika is going to be an issue that we have to deal with, but I think we need to look at those agencies that are there. How do we fund those, and how do we actually, just as with Ebola, stop it from coming to the U.S.?
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. We have time for a few more questions. Scott Kimbler.
Mr. Loudermilk has made no secret of where he stands on terrorism, neither has Senior Senator Johnny Isakson. And especially Isakson has taken the position that if you're going to stop ISIS, which we are seeing ISIS attacks in Europe and ISIS-inspired attacks here in the U.S., his position is if you're going to stop ISIS, you need to go to where he is and cut his head off like a snake. And that's a quote from Isakson. Do you think it's time to put feet on the ground in the Middle East and take care of ISIS head on?
I think the drone warfare is a better approach. To put more boots on the ground in another foreign country is just doesn't make sense. We need to step up the drone attacks and go after terrorists in that method.
All right. Thank you very much. Kristina.
All right, when we're talking about the Middle East, Mr. Collins, you've advocated for what you have called energy independence. And you've talked about your experience with energy innovation and conservation. Explain what you mean by that.
The bases around the United States are going through what they call a net zero program. And the net zero program is each one of the bases have to try to generate as much energy as they use during a yearly basis. They're doing this through methamphetamine. Good God, methamphetamine. They're doing this through generators that are producing gas from landfills. And the gas from landfills is co-generating steam to help like the Albany Marine Corps base. All their steam is free now. They got 50 megawatts of solar cells coming in place. It's not a 90% reliable energy. But as much as we get from free energy from the sun, as much as we get free energy from the gas that we burn, that's money that our businesses don't have to spend where they have to compete with individuals overseas. It makes the business market better. If they're using free energy and the sun's giving it to them, and they take that free energy and that comes off their bottom line and they have more disposable income to make more product, innovate, or hire more employees, that energy independence does more for us than you think it would. It would help our next generation fight a problem, and that would be resources.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Tom Baxter.
Mr. Cowan, do you think it would be a good idea to encourage South Korea and Japan to develop their own nuclear weapons arsenal?
I do not. I do not think that we should encourage other countries to expand their nuclear arsenal. I think rather, we as America, we've signed, we've agreed that, and we have boots on the ground in South Korea, but 32,000 troops on that border. We've agreed to protect South Korea. We've agreed to protect Japan. Now, I can understand how people might wonder, well, what have we really agreed to do? Because we've just given a couple $2 billion to Iran. We've fallen back on Israel. We've done a lot of things that we said we wouldn't. But adding more nuclear weapons to other sovereign jurisdictions is never the answer. The answer for me is make sure that we have a first place position in defense. Make sure we're the leader in defense. We invest in the military to keep the peace. And I believe that's the policy that we should be under. Nuclear weapons controlled by us to keep the peace is in the best interest of the world.
Thank you very much. We have time for a couple more questions. Scott Kimbler.
Mr. Collins, back to the conversation of energy. Yes. Last year, we saw record refining and even producing in the Southwest that drove our gas prices down here at home and across the country. Is that a path that the Southwest and the U.S. as a whole should continue, to where we do more refining and more drilling here in the U.S. to keep our own costs down?
I think that's a result of Katrina. When I got activated to go down to Katrina, when I came back home, my wife said we are gas rationing here. And there wasn't enough gas to go around because Georgia didn't have its own refinery. I think that's a reaction of Katrina. And those refineries are being put in place and those pipelines are being put in place. So terrorists would not have the opportunity to strike one place in Louisiana and take the entire southeastern region of the United States and hold them hostage. But any kind of energy production right now, we have to consider one thing. Look what happened to Kentucky. They're $255 million short in their budget right now, and they're collapsing left and right. Small businesses are falling off all over the place because the government shut down the coal industry and did not provide anything for re-education or helping the industry in Kentucky when they shut them down, and they are starving now. When we make these energy decisions, it's more than the district, it's more than the state. It's the future of our next generation and the future of our country that has to be considered. We can't leave anybody behind.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristina. Final question.
Mr. Davis, you've talked about self-financing your own campaign. I'm switching a little bit from energy to money. And you said you're not accepting donations. Why?
I felt like that America had been so good to me over the years that I've been in business that it was time to give back again. I can afford to, so why not? We're involved with a number of charities. We give to those. Why can't we just give overall to America or our district? I've also said that I would give my salary back to veterans. Why would I do that? Well, because they need it more than I do. I'm at a certain age that I'm not trying to build another career and going to Washington. I'm doing this because I believe there's a need. And I think that I have a lot to offer. I've traveled the world. I've generated hundreds of thousands of jobs, east to west, north to south. I'm willing to give more. I can.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. That is all the time we have for questions. Now, each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. And Mr. William Llop, you get the first closing statement.
Yes, thank you. We have a choice here in the 11th District. We have 4 candidates challenging a freshman congressman who does not keep his word. The reason why I'm the best candidate for the position is that I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. For over 30 years, I have been consulting businesses and individuals on being fiscally responsible and navigating the tax code. I have seen how the decisions in Washington affect everyday Americans, and I know how to fix it. You can count on me to be fiscally responsible and vote for fiscal responsibility in Washington. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. I don't just say I'm pro-life. I volunteer my time, my money, my expertise to serve the Pregnancy Aid Clinic, which is a pro-life organization who supports women and families. You can count on me to vote pro-life. It's time to send somebody to Washington
Thank you,
who
Mr.
actually
Llop.
serves the people of the 11th District. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Cowan, it is now your turn for a closing statement.
Thank you. I'm Daniel Cowan. I'm running to be your congressman. Look, we can all agree that Congress is broken. The Republican Congress controls the purse strings, and yet they're spending more money than we have. We all agree we don't have the money. Congressman Loudermilk, he promised to cut wasteful spending, yet he voted for the $1.1 trillion omnibus bill. He promised to oppose Boehner, and yet his first vote as a congressman was for Boehner as Speaker. He promised to change the culture in Washington, and yet after that vote, he took a $5,000 campaign contribution from John Boehner. Barry's not changing the culture of Washington. He's become part of the problem. Now, I'm Daniel Cowan. I'm running to be your congressman. I'm a businessman. I'm running because I think it's important that the people that represent you tell the truth, not just be represented and bought for by PACs and special interests. I would very much appreciate your vote on May 24th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Billy Davis, your closing statement.
I'm a Christian. I'm a pro-lifer. I'm an NRA member for all my life. Been a Republican all my life. I'm a businessman that's created hundreds of thousands of jobs. I've done it for myself. I can do it for our district. There's a lot more things that takes longer than we can discuss here. I think I'm the best qualified. Nobody will ever own me. I'll own myself, and I'll report only to the voters of District 11. I think I'm the best qualified, and I would appreciate your votes.
Thank you. Hayden Collins, it's your turn for a closing statement.
Thank you. I am not self-funded. I will not outspend my opponents, so we'll leave it at that. 6 out of 10 people, according to the poll released by David Perdue, said that they were extremely disappointed and felt betrayed by the representation in Washington, D.C. It's not because they were doing a bang-up job. I know the price of freedom. I know the cost of freedom. 3 of my children are disabled veterans. It's because of their service to the Constitution. That's why we're here, the representation. 8 of my children are still in uniform. I will be in uniform just for a little while longer, but I am welcome to resign my commission as soon as I take this office. You guys can help me with that, of course. But understand, it's all about representation. It's not about leadership. You can't legislate leadership in Washington, D.C. You can't reinforce the Constitution. It is about representation of the district and representation of the Constitution. I will represent the Constitution, I will represent the district, and I will take you with me. My name is Hayden Collins. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Barry Loudermilk, your turn for a closing statement.
Well, thank you. This is just one at the end of the series of debates we had. And in a debate the other day when we all finished, a gentleman came up to me and he said, Mr. Loudermilk, I came here looking for your replacement, but you're leaving with my vote. Another constituent came up and said, there is a lot of lip smacking going on in this campaign. How do we get to the truth? And I told her, my dad, a World War II veteran, told me, don't just say what you're going to do. Do something and let others talk about it. So I told him, I said, go look at what the watchdog groups in Washington, D.C. are saying about Barry Loudermilk. Citizens Against Government Waste named me the #1 most effective in cutting wasteful spending. FreedomWorks said I'm the best of the next generation freedom fighters. National Right to Life, the NRA, Georgia Life Alliance, Concerned Women of America, American Conservative Union. The list of conservative organizations that have endorsed my reelection continue to grow. Heritage Association said Barry Loudermilk is in the top 3 most conservative members of Congress. I'm Barry Loudermilk. Elections are about trust, and I want you to trust me with your vote on May 24th.
Thank you very much. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held on Tuesday, May 24th, and the early voting is already underway. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the debates they will host during the primary election season, visit atlantapressclub.org. More political debate is up next with the Republican candidates for Georgia's 9th Congressional District. I'm Donna Lowry. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.
Thank you.